Hey everybody, I'm Mike with MK Outdoor Journal, and this is The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second. So uncover your keyboard and fire up your fingers. It's time to join the conversation. Hey everybody, welcome to The Right of the People. It is Sunday, March 5th, 2023, and we got a lot to talk about, as we usually do. I want to welcome everybody who is out there with us in the chat. So far, we got G-Web showing up, giving a first thumbs up as always. Kingpin out there with a hearty yo. Warsaw Patriot in the house, as is Ozzy Osbourne barking at the moon. So far, I'm not seeing no one else, but I'm sure someone's here. If you are here, sound off in the chat. Say hi. That way I can say hi back. Also sound off in the chat if you have anything to say about what we talk about tonight. As always, this is a conversation. It is not just me talking. It's me talking with you. And, you know, that's kind of the whole point, right? If you have something to say, just be sure that, you know, you're not being a jerk about it. I'm okay with disagreement. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. But being a jerk just to be a jerk, yeah, not so much. We're not going to tolerate that. If you have something to say and you're watching this in a replay, sound off in the comments below. You know, drop yeah, I agree with that. No, I don't agree with that, or whatever you want. If you are listening to this in podcast format, you can go ahead and send me an email at mike@mkoutdoorjournal.com. and I will try to get back to you. Or, you know, you might want to think about coming and joining us here in the live show on Sunday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern here on the MK Outdoor Journal YouTube channel. I want to welcome Ohio Trucker One. How you doing? Showing up and asking what's shaking. What's shaking is apparently the brains of the people in Columbus, because, you know, they keep trying to they keep passing these local ordinances that are more restrictive than state law. But Ohio has preemption, so they're not allowed to do that. Two Live Moves says he is a semi-pro jerk. Well, you're only getting a little bit paid for it. Giz Gary in the house. What is up, America? Well, what is up with you, Giz? Warsaw says Ohio chemical train spill and now a magazine ban. I don't think the two are connected, but, you know, sure. So let's go ahead and get into talking about this wonderful magazine ban by the city of Columbus. This is from the Columbus Dispatch. From what date? From February 28th. Council. Owners of large gun magazines in Columbus have until July 1st to sell or move them. Columbus City Council passed legislation Monday that gives owners of gun magazines of 30 rounds or more until July 1st to move them out of the city, sell them to a licensed arms dealer outside Columbus, or turn them over to the city division of police. The city council also took action to make sure the city gets its share of income tax revenue from online sports betting in Ohio. While new legislation, the ordinance passed Monday essentially amends the gun control legislation that the city council passed on December 5th that effectively bans magazines of 30 rounds or more, as well as requires safe gun storage around children and criminalizes giving or selling firearms to anyone prohibited from owning them. The impetus for that is now that the city's common sense safety laws have been on the books for a few months, we're requesting the drafted changes after seeing how the ordinances are and could be practically applied and enforced. Pete Shipley, a spokesman for Columbus City Attorney Zach Klein, said to the Dispatch in an email, "If people hold on to their large magazines after July 1st, they can still take them to police for disposal under the new legislation. According to the December 5th legislation, anyone possessing a magazine that can hold 30 or more rounds will be charged with a misdemeanor with a mandatory 180 consecutive days in jail without work release, with a potential sentence of up to 1 year and a $1,500 fine. On January 20th, a Fairfield County judge denied the state of Ohio's request for a preliminary injunction to block the city's gun restrictions. As a result, those restrictions were set to go in place at midnight January 21st, according to Klein. On February 16th, the Buckeye Institute, a conservative think tank, filed suit in Delaware County Common Pleas Court challenging the Columbus gun restrictions. Part of Columbus sits in Delaware County. David Tryon, the Buckeye Institute's director of litigation, had no comment on the legislation passed on Monday. Tryon said the suit was filed in Delaware County, a more conservative county than heavily Democratic Franklin County, because it was the appropriate county for this type of legislation. I guess he probably meant for that suit. Asked to expand on that, he said, "I'd like to leave it at that." So the article goes on to talk about other things that the Columbus City Council did. So, let me get the chat viewer in here. I forgot to turn that on. Should be going here like soonish. Connected automatic. Yeah. Yep, there we go. Chat's up. So I think what they've guaranteed is that the next time there's a rally in Columbus, I'm going to go there sporting every 30-round magazine I have. Okay, not that many, but in full kit with all 30-round mags. That's what I'm going to do. And if they arrest me, they arrest me. I don't give a damn, because this is never going to stand. It can't stand, and it flies directly in the face of Ohio's preemption statute, and it can't stay. Unfortunately, all that'll happen is whoever has to file suit against this will get their damages, as in like actual damages. If they lost work, whatever. And they'll also get reasonable costs and fees, attorney's fees associated with this. But that'll come out of the Columbus taxpayers' pockets, not the pockets of the lawmakers. And that's what we need in Ohio. Honestly, I think we need it anywhere that has preemption laws. The preemption laws need to be amended in this state so that when rogue city councils or county commissioners or any small political subdivision smaller than the state level decides that they want to impose restrictions that are more strict than state law, that those lawmakers themselves personally and individually in their own persons get held responsible and get held accountable and have to pay out of their own pocket, and maybe even get some jail time for breaking the law. Until that happens, there is absolutely zero incentive for them to stop doing things like this, for them to stop grandstanding, for them to stop virtue signaling, for them to stop trying to impose their will and infringe upon the rights of the citizens of the state of Ohio or any other place with preemption. There's no incentive for them to stop it. Because what happens to them personally? Nothing. And that's not how it should be. These people should be hung up by their heels personally. Sovereign immunity, qualified immunity should not pertain to this. They should not be immune to prosecution and suit simply because they're public officials. What they're doing, and they know it, is completely against state law, and they should be made to pay for it. What do you guys think out in the chat? Which is what? There? What do you think there in the chat? Let me know. Again, if you are watching this in the replay, sound off in the comments and let me know. What do you think? Do lawmakers need to be held personally accountable for this in their own persons, not in their official capacity, but as in Joe Blow citizen, to pay this out of their pockets and to go to jail, possibly suffer a criminal prosecution for knowingly and willfully breaking state preemption laws? Or do you think that goes a little too far? Let's see. Warsaw says, at this point, restricting mags and firearms is like restricting marijuana back in the old days. Now people smoke pot and people don't enforce it. Crazy how we as citizens live these days. Says 100% preemption should be in all 50 states. Ohio Trucker One says, how did the magazine ban pass in Columbus? Also, what will the legal ramifications be if they enforce it? Well, like I said, up to 180 consecutive days in jail and a fine and whatnot. That's crazy. I don't see how they could enforce it because it's illegal. I don't think it would stand. Although, if someone were busted for carrying a 30-round magazine in protest and they had to go to court in Franklin County, you might be hosed until it gets to the appellate level because, Franklin County, as the article said, is heavily Democratic. And, regardless of whether or not there are some supposedly pro-gun Democrats, the Democrat Party is the party of gun control. Always has been and probably always will be. John Brown Productions is out there. How you doing? G-Webs is still out there. No one needs 30 rounds of bullets unless you are a bad shot at deers with Kevlar vests. Oh, okay. So I see you've been spending some time in the White House, drinking the Kool-Aid. G-Web says, or shooting 9mm. Science. Yeah, I don't think that's how science works, G. Come on, man. I don't know. I think your tactical assault pug looks like a 9mm shooter, G. You might have to modify your stance on that. Just saying. So, still, I can't see how this would ever stand at all. I reached out to Ohio gun owners and Buckeye Firearms Association both for comment on this, but I haven't gotten anything back. I had kind of hoped I would, but it just hasn't happened so far. But I did do that today, so I'm sure they really just wasn't any time to address the issue with me because usually they're pretty good about getting back to me on stuff. But this thing in Columbus isn't all that's going to attempt to negatively impact the rights of gun owners. Ohio Trucker One says, I live in Delaware County, so I'm safe for now. That's good, but if you go into Franklin County, don't have a large, quote unquote, large capacity magazine with you, right? As I said, the thing at Columbus isn't all that's happening to impact us, because 57 million plus users impacted as financial company becomes first to track gun purchases. This is from the Independent Journal Review. This is from March 2nd. Anyone using a Discover card to make a purchase in a gun store will have that purchase tracked beginning in April. We remain focused on continuing to protect and support lawful purchases on our network while protecting the privacy of cardholders, Discover said in a statement, according to Reuters. Last year, the International Organization for Standardization, an international body, announced it was creating a new merchant category code for gun shop sales. Such stores had formerly been classified as dealers in general merchandise, according to Fox Business. As noted by CNBC, the code will show where a purchase was made and the amount, but not what was bought. As noted by the website Upgraded Points, There are 57 million Discover credit cards in existence. I have one of them. Visa, MasterCard, and American Express have said they will abide by the new rule. Following ISO's decision to establish a new merchant category code, Visa will proceed with next steps while ensuring we protect all legal commerce on the Visa network in accordance with our long-standing rules, Visa said in a statement last year, according to CNBC. This action answers the call of millions of Americans who want safety from gun violence, Amalgamated Chief Executive Priscilla Sims Brown said, according to Reuters. First off, gun violence doesn't exist. You guys all know my thoughts on that. Well, if you've listened to the show before, gun violence doesn't exist. Second, how is tracking gun purchases made legally by legal law-abiding citizens via Form 4473 on that are made with credit cards? How is that going to make anyone safer? Because I guarantee you that the percent of those weapons used in a crime is so infinitesimal as to be statistically irrelevant. The vast majority of crime guns, quote unquote, are obtained illegally. They're stolen, they're bought from someone who stole them, or they're acquired through other illegal means. So to say that tracking credit card purchases is going to make anyone safer is bull. The concept of the code, according to its proponents, is that an individual racking up one or several large purchases at a gun store could be someone who is planning some type of suspicious activity, or could just be stocking up because they're going to go take a class or something. Part of the argument against using the code as a harbinger of a mass shooting being planned is that not all expensive purchases at a gun store are weapons. Fox Business, for example, noted that an individual buying a gun safe could spend a significant amount of money trying to be a responsible owner. Very true. I mean, someone spending 10 grand at a store could be buying a safe. They could be buying reloading equipment. They could be buying other sporting goods. You don't know. Former Visa CEO Al Kelly spoke to Time about the new process in January, saying it might mean less than what its supporters think, while noting that it will use the new code. Guns are allowed in the United States, and we would fully expect that anybody who wants to buy a gun should be able to buy the gun provided all the other checks are done. On top of that, we're telling them that we don't collect that level of data for customers, he said. So, if Visa's Chief Communications Officer, K.C. Kavanaugh, goes into a gun store and buys 3 thermoses and a tent, and you go in and buy a rifle and 5 rounds of ammunition, all I know is you both went to the same gun store. I know what gun store, I know when you went, and I know how much money you spent. But I don't know what you bought, he said. Florida legislators are pushing back, according to the Orlando Weekly. And this part I think is pretty cool. Credit card companies could face fines of up to $10,000 per violation for tracking firearm and ammunition sales in Florida under a measure approved Tuesday by a Senate committee. Last month, the Senate Banking and Insurance Committee voted 7-3 to support SB 214 that would fine credit card companies up to $10,000 per violation for using the new code. In Florida, we take it very seriously to protect consumers' rights, gun rights, and their right to privacy, and I believe that this MCC, Merchant Category Code, would lead to the creation of a registry in essence, potentially having a chilling effect on constitutional rights, said Republican State Senator Danny Burgess, the bill's sponsor. We're basically putting teeth behind current law in Florida, not federal law, I'm sorry. We're basically putting teeth behind current law in Florida, which prevents government and private registries, he said. A similar bill had been proposed in Mississippi. So, Discover, starting in April, will begin tracking any purchases made at gun stores. Allegedly, they're not going to track what you buy, just where, when, and how much, which in and of itself, I feel, is an invasion of privacy. What are they going to do with this information? Who are they going to give it to? I mean, because, stuff like that just couldn't be leaked, right? Ask the California database. What do you guys think? Is this garbage or is it much ado about nothing? let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comments. Or if you're listening by podcast, let me know via email. In the chat, it's, let's see. Ozzy says, I don't see the word need in the Second Amendment. Absolutely right. G-Webs. John Brown says, G-Webs, you can't have my 30 bullet clipazine. So banking companies are now trying to make a police state? FFL adds a surcharge if anyone uses a credit card anyway, always has, so I'm not using one there. Yeah, that's because they have to pay a processing fee, so they're not going to pay that processing fee. You're going to pay that processing fee. Two Live Move seems shocked that G-Webs is in fact wearing pants. Let's see, what else do we have to talk about today, folks? There's some other stuff. There is some good news, though, some good news, though, on the legal front. There's these next three stories are about victories for the cause of the Second Amendment. The first comes from the Second Amendment Foundation. Those of you who watch the channel for a while know that I'm a huge fan of the Second Amendment Foundation. I am, in fact, a life member, and I think everybody should be. You know, if you can't afford the $150 it takes to be a life member, be a yearly member at $15 a year. The Second Amendment Foundation has 30 to 40 active cases at any one time protecting your rights, trying to prevent their erosion and, in fact, restore them one lawsuit at a time. And no, folks, they're not paying me to pimp them. I just believe in them that much. This is one case that they're fighting on our behalf. This is from March 3rd. Federal judge grants preliminary injunction in Vanderstock case. A federal judge in Texas has granted a preliminary injunction against the federal government's enforcement of the final rule regarding partially manufactured firearm parts and kits in a case known as Vanderstock v. Garland, which challenged the authority of the Justice Department and Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives to regulate items that are not firearms as if they are firearms. This is a huge victory, said Alan Gottlieb, founder and executive vice president of the Second Amendment Foundation, which was allowed to intervene in the case last summer, along with Defense Distributed, a Texas-based company. The court's preliminary determination is pretty straightforward, and it notes that Second Amendment Foundation and Defense Distributed are likely to succeed on the merits of their case against the receiver rule. The decision was issued by Judge Reed O'Connor for the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Texas, Fort Worth Division. His preliminary injunction applies to Defense Distributed and its clients. We are pleased with the court's ruling, which correctly finds that we are likely to succeed on our claims, said Adam Kraut, SAF's executive director. Judge O'Connor agrees that ATF's final rule expanded the agency's authority over parts that may be readily converted into frames or receivers, which surpasses the authority granted by Congress. Even more compelling is that the judge agrees that ATF's rule unlawfully treats parts kits as firearms. It's refreshing to see rogue administrative agencies being reined in by the checks and balances of our system of government. Last August, ATF promulgated its final rule purporting to regulate partially manufactured firearm parts and parts kits, departing from almost 45 years of precedent, during which the agency declined to interpret the term firearms, as noted in the Gun Control Act of 1968, to apply to partially manufactured frames and receivers. The government flip-flopped in December, asserting that certain products are considered frames and are therefore firearms. Subsequently, a lawsuit was filed challenging the legality of the final rule on the grounds that the regulation exceeds the scope of ATF's statutory authority. The injunction takes effect immediately. Good. And you're thinking, yeah, but Mike, I don't make my own guns. Why do I care? Why on earth should I give a flip if the frames and receiver rule doesn't go into place? Well, the argumentative framework used here to get this injunction is also being used in the cases, in other cases against the ATF, like the Bumpstock rule and the the pistol brace rule. But even if you don't have or don't want bump stocks, and even if you don't have or don't want braced pistols, this case sets precedent, or will once it's decided finally, which this injunction is an indicator of what direction that's going to go. Once this is finalized, it'll set precedent even further that the ATF has no regulatory authority to redefine terms without benefit of Congress passing legislation. It reins them in. It prevents further overreach on something you want, like, I don't know, semi-automatic firearms, magazine bans, etc., etc. It keeps the ATF from doing an end run around Congress like they've been doing lately. And that is only a good thing as far as I'm concerned. Ozzy says he is a life member of the Second Amendment Foundation. Out freaking standing. G-Web says this is, like many things, an opportunity to make a stand against the marginalization of gun ownership. A time to educate the industry. I would like to see a campaign by gun shops to prevent this from happening again. Warsaw asks, what's stopping citizens from going to an ATM and getting cash instead of using a credit card? You think banks will stop that? Because I don't know. Oh, heck no, the banks aren't going to stop that. They'll welcome that garbage because, the interest rate on cash advances is atrocious. That's why. Because what would stop me from doing that is, that exorbitant fee I'd be paying to get a cash advance on my credit card. Born to be a shooter, Josh wants to know, what did Columbus do? From Jackson County, but live in North Carolina now, but curious to know because of visit there. What Columbus did was they passed a ordinance that banned possession of 30-round magazines and more. And you have until July 1st to turn them in or destroy them. Or if you're caught with them, you'll face 180 consecutive days in jail without work release. And I think it's a $2,500 fine. This isn't going to stand once it's challenged because, preemption, which the state Supreme Court ruled was constitutional. So, it's just inconveniencing and attempting to strike fear in the hearts of gun owners by the Columbus City Council. That's what Columbus did. Bunch of jerks. I don't know. I think I'm still going to use my credit cards. I don't care. Let them track it. They're not getting information as to what I'm buying, just how much I'm spending, where and when. Yeah, that's crap, but if I want that rifle, what else are you going to do, right? And I think they know people are going to keep using it. I mean, I don't know. A lot of times I don't have the cash in hand to go in and buy one. So instead, I'll charge, right? Although maybe I need to rethink that. Maybe I need to just pay cash for stuff like that. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think it's okay to use a credit card to buy stuff like that under these circumstances? Or should you just save up the cash and do it that way? Let me know. Sound off. But the frames and receivers rule injunction isn't the only legal victory for the Second Amendment this week, because we have another. This is out of Illinois, of all places, to score a victory. I think that's awesome, by the way. This is from The Truth About Guns. State judge issues order blocking enforcement of Illinois firearms ban statewide. From March 3rd. A Macon County, Illinois Circuit Court judge signed and ordered this afternoon that permanently blocked the new Illinois Firearms Ban Act passed back in January. State Representative Dan Calkins was the lead plaintiff in the state case, which challenged the law on equal protection grounds, among others. Judge Rodney S. Forbes signed the order Friday afternoon because of his state appellate court decision last month upholding the equal protection violation in another case. Calkins and his attorney, Jerry Stocks, won the case, using many of the same arguments employed by Tom DeVore, an attorney from Greenville who had won earlier in 3 prior cases on the same grounds. In DeVore's cases, he gained relief for his named plaintiffs only. With today's order, Calkins has succeeded in extending protection to all gun owners in Illinois. Land of Lincoln gun owners had better get busy because Kwame Raoul, Illinois' beleaguered attorney general, will surely take this to the Illinois Supreme Court as soon as possible. The time is now to buy America's favorite rifle and similar guns, along with magazines, by the case. What's even more remarkable is that Calkins made this happen while spending less than $20,000. As Illinois residents, we'll enjoy it while we've got it, until we can litigate the entire law on its obvious Second Amendment violations. A Macon County judge has declared Illinois' gun ban and registry unconstitutional, setting up a direct appeal to the Illinois Supreme Court. The move means the law is not enforceable statewide pending appeal, according to attorney Jerry Stocks, who represents State Representative Dan Calkins, Republican, Decatur, on his challenge to the ban. Following a status hearing Friday afternoon in the case, Judge Rodney Forbes signed an agreed order declaring the measure unconstitutional. Well-established Illinois authority provides that a law declared unconstitutional pursuant to a facial challenge is void, as if the law never existed, and is unenforceable in its entirety in all applications, Stock said in a statement after the order was issued. Forbes initially took the final order under advisement Friday, but he signed it a couple hours later. Forbes' hands were essentially legally tied because Illinois' Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, a higher court, already upheld an earlier ruling granting a temporary restraining order preventing enforcement of the ban against named plaintiffs only. But Stocks said Friday's order is in effect statewide. So good for you folks there in Illinois. A little bit of light for you there. See, G-Web says Travelers checks trade, work it off, cyber coins, local trade groups. Oh, he's talking about ways to buy guns. Yeah, you're right. My FFL will also accept a personal check, says Giz. Barter. Vanilla credit cards. Not sure what vanilla credit cards. But yes, my FFL will accept barter. I've seen him pay cash for cast iron cooking pots before. Ozzy is commenting on the current article saying, yeah, Judge. Yeah, Judge, indeed. I think that's awesome. But wait, folks. There is one more huge, I think, anyway, huge case to discuss. And that is this one right here. This is from BearingArms.com. Bumpstocks back on store shelves in 3 states. Though for how long is anyone's guess. After the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals struck down the ATF's administrative ban on bump stocks, the Department of Justice had until last Monday to appeal the decision to the Supreme Court. But after the DOJ failed to do so, the Fifth Circuit's order took effect, and that means that in Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, bump stocks are now once again available for purchase. So, a while back, the court ruled that the bump stock ban was unconstitutional. Now, we all wondered whether ATF was going to take this to the Supreme Court because that was their only other option. Well, they let the time for that run out. They decided not to put this case in front of SCOTUS. The DOJ can still appeal to the trial court to reinstate the ban since the Fifth Circuit remanded the case back to the U.S. District Court in Texas, but it's still worth noting that Merrick Garland and Company chose not to ask the Supreme Court to consider the issue. which would have been the next logical step in the appeals process. Garland may have made the calculation that it's better to keep this decision confined to the Fifth Circuit's jurisdiction for the time being, rather than risk the Supreme Court agreeing with it and overturning the ban on a nationwide basis. We've seen gun control activists use this strategy before when it comes to concealed carry, with Democrats in Illinois and Washington, D.C. choosing to accept appellate court defeats and placing the cases out of reach of the 9 justices. That strategy was only successful as a delaying tactic, with the Supreme Court invalidating May issue laws last summer, but playing keep away from SCOTUS is probably the most viable option for anti-gunners at the moment. Austin, Texas gun store owner Michael Cargill, who filed the lawsuit heard by the Fifth Circuit, says he plans on carrying Bumpstocks at his store soon. But as the Dallas Morning News notes in their coverage of the DOJ's decision not to appeal the Fifth Circuit decision, this case is about far more than the Bumpstocks themselves. Cargill's case could have implications beyond the Second Amendment, because it could hinge on a Supreme Court doctrine that courts should defer to the agency in charge of enforcing a particular statute as long as its actions are reasonable. The doctrine, the 1984 ruling in Chevron USA Inc. v. Natural Resources Defense Council, gives ATF and other agencies a great deal of latitude. South Texas College of Law professor Drew Stevenson said, and other circuit courts upheld the bump stock ban on that basis. The split among the appeals courts could compel the Supreme Court to take the case, but the Biden administration may hesitate to go there and risk a ruling that would weaken the Chevron doctrine. Conservative critics say the Chevron doctrine cedes too much power to the bureaucrats. Cargill said his lawsuit was designed not just to restore bump stock trade, but to go after all agencies, for example, the CDC. But regulators need that deference to ensure public safety, Stevenson said. Lick your master's jackboots, Stevenson. That can affect everything from environment like pollution laws to workplace safety laws with OSHA to national highways and safety regulations about cars, he said. The Chevron doctrine does give governmental agencies far too much power, in my opinion, but in the case of the bump stock ban, the Fifth Circuit found that the ATF ban on bump stocks wasn't allowed because the devices simply don't meet the definition of a machine gun. The court went on to say, however, that even if the issue wasn't as cut and dried, they still would have sided with Cargill in his challenge because of the rule of lenity. A rich legal tradition supports the well-known rule that penal laws are to be construed strictly. United States v. Whitberger, 18 U.S. As Chief Justice Marshall explained long ago, the rule is founded on the tenderness of the law for the rights of individuals, and on the plain principle that the power of punishment is vested in the legislative, not the judicial department. It is the legislature, not the court, which is to define a crime and ordain its punishment. The government's regulation violates these principles. As an initial matter, it purports to allow ATF, rather than Congress, to set forth the scope of criminal prohibitions. Indeed, the government would outlaw bump stocks by administrative fiat, even though the very same agency routinely interpreted the ban on machine guns as not applying to the type of bump stocks at issue here. Nor can we say that the statutory definition unambiguously supports the government's interpretation. As noted above, we conclude that it unambiguously does not. But even if we are wrong, the statute is at least ambiguous in this regard. And if the statute is ambiguous, Congress must cure that ambiguity, not the federal courts. The big issue here is how much deference should be given to government agencies in crafting new regulations, especially those that come complete with potential federal prison sentences. We're seeing the same arguments raised in Cargill v. Garland used in litigation challenging the ATF's regulations on frames and receivers. Told you. As well as the new regulations on brace-equipped pistols. The agency isn't just operating within its congressional mandate to implement regulations, but is actually usurping Congress and creating new laws instead, which is something I've said for years. It remains to be seen if the judges in those cases will be persuaded by that argument, but I think there's a very good chance for more favorable rulings ahead. What Merrick Garland decides to do if appellate courts rule the ATF has overstepped its authority with their ghost gun regs and stabilizing brace rules is also an open question. But based on DOJ's inaction in the wake of the Fifth Circuit's Bumpstock decision, it looks like he's decided the best option is to take the loss and keep as many gun control cases away from the Supreme Court for as long as possible. The fact that Garland decided to keep this case away from SCOTUS is extremely encouraging to me. It tells me that Garland knows he's fighting a loser. He has absolutely no leg to stand on with this. That this ATF overreach, the habit they've gotten into of redefining things that Congress has already defined and only Congress has the power to define, is eventually going to crumble. They're not going to be able to do it. They're not going to be able to continue doing it. It's going to be found unconstitutional, and they're going to be ruled against, and they won't be able to do it. How long it's going to take, I don't know. But these things will not stand. They cannot stand because they're unconstitutional on their face. What do you guys think? Do you agree? Do you think that it's constitutional? Do you think it's unconstitutional? Do you think that, this decision only being in effect in the Fifth Circuit doesn't have effect on the rest of us? Because I think that you would be wrong in saying that. I think that the same the same argument strategy used to obtain this ruling in the Fifth Circuit would prevail on a national level. And so does Merrick Garland. That's why it's not going to the national level yet. Let's see. Vanilla credit cards, anonymous cards you pay for cash at the register of the store, like gift cards. Oh, okay. Or pay for the gun and trade gift cards for the local grocery store. You buy the gift cards on credit. They use them for food. A gun happened too. Okay. Gotcha. Ozzy says that affects me. Good. Well, I'm glad it does. I think Ozzy, he's talking about the Illinois case. So good. I'm glad it does. I hope someone in here is positively affected by this Bumpstock case too. I know if I lived in those areas, even though I don't really have a use for bump stocks, I go out and buy one anyway, just as a thumb in the eye to the ATF. But that's just me. I'm that kind of jerk, right? It's strange to think that we have Donald Trump to thank for the bump stock ban, but we do. He ordered the ATF to do this, and they complied. They did, despite the fact that it was illegal, despite the fact that he was told it was illegal, despite the fact that the ATF knows it's illegal. He did it. Yet the other side of that coin is Donald Trump has also secured the future of the Second Amendment via the judicial appointments he made while he was president, all up and down the federal bench, from the lowest level to the highest. Had we been dealing with President Hillary Clinton at the time, the future of the Second Amendment would be far different than what it is now. Now, as you can see, based on these three cases, the future of the Second Amendment, legally speaking, looks bright indeed. We're on a roll. There is momentum that is pro-gun in the courts. And that's because of Donald J. Trump. So it's strange to think that he ordered the illegal redefinition of the bump stock, which encouraged the ATF to illegally redefine frames and receivers and illegally redefine short-barreled rifles. Yet his judicial picks are the ones that are going to undo all of that and secure the future of the Second Amendment for the foreseeable future. China is always copying everything. It don't shock me. Warsaw Patriot asks, Mike, you see that China is now copying and making a copy of the pistol braces on Amazon? Yeah. Yeah, Trump was also a fan of red flags. You know, take the guns first, due process later, which is completely bass-ackwards, right? Anyone who pays attention to the channel should know that I'm not a fan of red flag law. As a matter of fact, I went to our state house here in Columbus and spoke at a rally against red flag laws. The video's somewhere on my channel. I don't have a link to it right now. Not going to look for it. But yeah, it's red flag laws are absolute unconstitutional garbage. And really, any of these. G-Web says, question, he did both those things. Were both intentional? Were either a mistake? Well, I'd certainly think they were a mistake, and I don't know how you can accidentally give an order. But, I get what you're saying. How he could, with one hand, order something that he knew was on its face garbage that satisfied political opponents and satisfied the hounds, yet knew that down the road, because of his appointments, it would be reversed. Yeah, that could have been very intentional on his part. I see what you're getting at. Yeah, could have been, for sure. Whatever you want to say, Donald Trump's not stupid. You can't perform at the level he performed at in business for all those years to and be dumb. Yeah, like everything and everybody else, he had some setbacks, but he always came right back and he's on top. I mean, he's a billionaire, right? A little bit more success than I've had. So I can't fault the man's intelligence. So it could have been very intentional. I still think it was a mistake, because I think that, assuming things were on the up and up in the 2020 election, it very well may be what caused him to lose that election. The pro-gun vote put him into office, and the apathy of the pro-gun vote may have let him lose that office. That's entirely possible. Either way, I think it was short-sighted, and I think that banning the bump stocks, along with all the other stuff that the ATF is doing, is downright stupid. Speaking of downright stupid.
And now prepare yourself for another tale of stupidity in this episode of Moron of the Week.
First up in Moron of the Week, folks, is this piece from Breitbart. Activist David Hogg, Americans have no right to a gun. Gun control activist David Hogg tweeted Sunday that Americans have no right to a gun, suggesting that the right to keep and bear arms applies only to members of the militia. Hogg tweeted, "You have no right to a gun. You are not a militia. When you're talking about your Second Amendment rights, you're talking about a state's right to have what is today the National Guard. The modern interpretation of the Second Amendment is a ridiculous fraud pushed for decades by the gun lobby." No, Davey, I would say, Mr. Hogwash, that the modern interpretation of the Second Amendment is a ridiculous fraud pushed for decades by the gun control lobby, which is that bullshit you were just spouting right there. All the rights of the Bill of Rights, unless specifically stated otherwise, are rights for the people. You know, it doesn't say the right of the state to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It is, as a certain wonderful, outstanding, best darn show on the internet are called, the right of the people, not the state. The text of the Second Amendment says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Founding Father James Madison used Federalist 46 to explain that the American citizenry had within itself the authority to band together for purposes of repelling tyranny. He clearly stated that the ultimate authority resides in the people alone, and he explained that even a federal government fitted with a standing army will find itself unable to overcome the people armed and banded together. Extravagant as the supposition is, let it however be made. Let a regular army fully equal to the resources of the country be formed, and let it be entirely at the devotion of the federal government. Still, it would not be going too far to say that the state governments, with the people on their side, would be able to repel the danger. Madison continued, the highest number to which, according to the best computation, a standing army can be carried in any country does not exceed 1/100th part of the whole number of souls, or 1/25th part of the number able to bear arms. This proportion would not yield in the United States an army of more than 25 or 30,000 men. Got to understand this was back in colonial era, or just formed USA era. To these would be opposed a militia amounting to near 500,000 of citizens with arms in their hands, officered by men chosen from among themselves, fighting for their common liberties, and united and conducted by governments possessing their affections and confidence, referring to the state governments. It may well be doubted whether a militia thus circumstanced would ever be conquered by such a proportion of regular troops. Those who are best acquainted with the last successful resistance of this country take away firearms or heavily restrict them via gun control, and the militia is defanged, becoming nothing more than a group of men bound together with weapons consisting of stone sticks and verbal jabs. Therefore, because a well-regulated militia is necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. In other words, the right to keep and bear arms is intended as a surety that the militia will always pose enough resistance to keep the state free. So hogwash, you are the first contestant in Moron of the Week. But not to be outdone, we have the gift that keeps on giving, President Sniffykins. President Biden, we're going to ban assault weapons again come hell or high water. President Joe Biden pledged to ban assault weapons again during a Wednesday night address to the House Democratic Caucus Issues Conference, saying he would secure the ban come hell or high water. Fox News quoted Biden saying, I know it may make some of you uncomfortable, but that little state above me, Delaware, is one of them, has one of the highest rates of gun ownership. But guess what? We're going to ban assault weapons again come hell or high water, and high-capacity magazines. And here is El Sniffador in his own words.
But guess what? We're going to ban assault weapons again, come hell or high water. And high-capacity magazines. When we did it last time, it reduced mass death.
Liar. Of course, those probably aren't his words. Those are probably the presidential teleprompter's words, so whichever of his handlers wrote the script for him, their words, but, hey, President Sniffy is the second contestant in Moron of the Week. But last but not least is this absolute buffoon right here. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's an honest mistake, but it's a damn stupid mistake. Mix ammo. What can possibly go wrong? Epic fail video. It's not wise. It's wise not to mix different caliber ammo together. This shooter did not heed the warning and paid the ultimate price. Witness what happens when the wrong caliber gets in the wrong gun. In a video shared on Facebook by Rogue Gunworks, we see how to explode a rifle in short order. Load the wrong caliber into it. Firing a rifle in 5.56, the shooter had loaded a single 300 blackout cartridge. When the round tried to chamber, there was a serious kaboom. The rifle blew up and ended ended up a massive mess. Luckily for the shooter and the bystanders, no one appears to have been seriously injured. What was a total loss was this weapon. Don't try this at home. He's lucky he wasn't shouldering that thing. That could have been real bad. Yeah, that could have been really, really bad if he'd been shouldering that thing and had it up at his face, right? So, stupid shooter, you're the next contestant on Moron of the Week. Let me go ahead and enter these into the poll. Let's see. Start a poll. Moron of the Week. First up, Hogwash. Next, El Sniffy. And last but not least is Silly Shooter. So, folks, who do you think deserves to be Moron of the Week? Hogwash, Sniffy Joe, or Silly Shooter? Sound off in the poll and let me know what you voted in the chat. If you are watching this in the replay, sound off in the comments. If you're listening in podcast format, which you can do on Google Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Pandora, and I think one or two more. Sound off in an email, mike@mkoutdoorjournal.com, or you can go ahead and come over here to the YouTube channel and sound off in a comment if you want. They're telling me that's an old video. Yeah, I know, but that's who I have out there this week. Woods can confirm that's an old video from 4 years ago. Woods says Sniffy because he has more power than the rest. Hogwash, however, is at the win for 62% so far with 8 votes. Sniffy Joe, 38%. We need more votes in here, folks. We got 20 concurrent viewers. That's 12 more votes we need to get, folks. So let's get some votes in here. Hogwash, Sniffy Joe Biden, or the Kaboomerang Shooter? Just clickety-click in the poll, folks. Hogwash for saying you ain't got a right to a gun. Sniffy Joe for, we're going to ban assault weapons. Come hell or high water. Or Captain Kaboom. And Gabriel says the militia is the whole body of the populace. Yes, yes it is. That's the whole point, says Warsaw Patriot. Yes, yes it is. 10 votes, 7-3, Hogwash to Sniffy Joe. 11 votes. Looks like 8-3 for Hogwash over Sniffy Joe. Silly Shooter ain't getting nothing. All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and call this with David Hogg. You are the moron of the week for March 5th, 2023.
And there we had another tale of stupidity in this week's episode of Moron of the Week.
All right, folks, those of you who've been here before know what this is. For those of you who haven't, it's time for Roll Call 219's favorite segment, Self-Defense Shoutouts. Self-defense shoutouts are not where I'm reveling in the proposition that the bad guy won a room temperature challenge by taking a dirt nap. It's where I'm instead reveling in the proposition that the good guy had the means, method, and opportunity to keep the bad guy from making him do the same. First up is this piece from WJHL.com. SCSO, one injured after Kingsport shooting, man feared for safety. Kingsport, Tennessee. A person was injured in a Kingsport shooting after a homeowner feared for his safety on Wednesday night, authorities report. Sullivan County Sheriff's Office deputies responded to the shooting just after 8 p.m. on Wednesday at a home on Hillendale Drive. According to the SCSO, An investigation revealed that the homeowner allegedly encountered an individual that exited a home and approached him in a manner that caused him to fear for his safety. The homeowner then fired a pistol, striking the individual, stated the release. One person was reportedly transported to a treatment for non-life-threatening injuries. Incident will be presented to Sullivan County Grand Jury for consideration of any charges, which I hope says no. Next up is this piece from CW39.com. Possible attempted robbery leads to fatal shooting at North Houston gas station. It's from February 27th. A man is dead in what may have been an attempted robbery in North Houston. Police say a group of men were standing outside of a Shell gas station at 647 Greens Road a little after midnight when a man wearing a ski mask walked up to them and pulled out a gun, attempting to rob them. One of the men pulled out his own weapon and shot the man multiple times, police said. The person who was shot fled the scene and was taken to a hospital by a private vehicle, but later died at the hospital. The shooter stayed on the scene and spoke with an HPD detective about the incident. Next up is this piece from WGXA-TV. Teen shot, killed while breaking into Hawkinsville home, from March 1st. Pulaski County, Georgia. A teen is dead in Pulaski County after being shot by a homeowner. According to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, a 15-year-old was breaking into a Jelk Street home in Hawkinsville around 4:30 p.m. Tuesday. Investigators say someone in the home shot the teen, who later died. The identity of the teen has not been released. It's sad that a teenager died, but you know what? He obviously hadn't learned anything in his life. I hate to say it like that, but when you go breaking into someone's house, you have to assume that you're taking your life into your hands. And last but most certainly not least, from KFoxTV.com, man suspected in Northeast El Paso home invasion shot, later found by police, from March 2nd. El Paso, Texas. A man yelling for help at an intersection in Northeast El Paso was allegedly shot by a homeowner. Bruce Wayne Murphy, 29, is a suspect of a home invasion that occurred in the 7500 block of Howard Street in the Northeast Wednesday morning. Police stated Murphy forced his way into a home and fired a weapon. Murphy allegedly shot a dog while inside the home. I wonder if he was an ATF agent undercover. Sean Patrick Siniga, who was inside the home along with two others, shot Murphy with his handgun. Minutes later, police officers responded to the intersection of Gateway South Boulevard and Broadus Drive to a report of an assault/shooting. Murphy was found in the roadway with a gunshot wound. According to police, Murphy was taken to the hospital. He's expected to be booked into the El Paso County Detention Facility once he's released from the hospital. Murphy is facing charges of burglary of habitation and a $500,000 bond. Detectives are continuing to look into the case, stated police. So there you go, folks. Despite what the lamestream media would have you believe, what the anti-gun wackos like David Hogwash would have you think, the good guy with a gun does indeed stop the bad guy with the gun with disturbing regularity. And on that note, folks, we are going to go ahead and wrap this up. I am, as always, humbled and amazed that you've chosen to spend this time here with me. I can't tell you how much it means, and I appreciate it. What else I will appreciate is if you contact your Congress critters and elected representatives and let them know that things like the ATF's horrific overreach need to be reined in by them. Send them a snail mail, email, telephone, telegraph, carrier pigeon, bicycle messenger, smoke signals, heliograph, anything that you have to do to let them know what you think, and never, ever, ever give up the fight. I'll see you guys on the next one.